Hello and welcome to our webinar. So this is our second in our series. We did have one last month and that was about a real introduction to Google Analytics, the very basics. So if you haven't seen that one already, just check it out. It's on our YouTube channel, so you've got to find it on there. And what we're going to do in this webinar is I've got a series of slides and examples to show you through this. I'm going to talk through the different elements of how to audit your Google Analytics account. If you are on YouTube at the moment and you'd like to ask any questions, what I'll do is answer them at the end. So what you can do is use the chat facility, and we've got Saeed on there, and he's going to answer, sorry, he'll collate all those for me. Now I'll answer them at the very end of the webinar instead of going back and forth as we go along. So any questions, just pop them into the chat, and then Saeed will collate them, as I say. If you don't want to have the chat on because it's distracting for you, there's a little cross mark if you're on a mobile device, or you can press the button that says hide chat just underneath it if you're on desktop, because you might not want to see people waffling on there. You just want to have your full concentration on me during this whole webinar. So auditing a Google Analytics account, auditing sounds a bit boring, doesn't it? But it's actually really important for you to do. And the cases that I've had with supporting arts organisation over the last 12 months, where we've come across lots and lots of different things, and what I've done is collated the top ones that you should be looking at when you are looking at your Google Analytics account. So it's important to do it because the data quality that you have in Google Analytics will only show you what it's been fed. So the data that you give it has to be of a high quality, and then we're going to look at different ways about how that sometimes you get bad data in there. And the account setup as standard, Google Analytics is an off-the-shelf platform. So when that's given to you and installed on your website, if you're not configured it for your organization, you're going to get the bog standard data that it gives you. So there's lots more that you can get out of it. You can get more intelligent insight for your organization. So this is something I'm going to send you. So I'm just going to have a drink. This is something I'm going to send you, which is called the Google Analytics checklist. So everything that I'm going through today, we've listed it. And I'll show you the live example of it. It's a Google Sheet, so it looks like this. And what you'll be able to do is copy it into your Google Drive, and then you can look through all the different points that we're going to talk through today. So every question that I'm going to ask is in here. And then you can go through it, look it through your own account, and then you can tick the different boxes that we have. Whether you have or not achieved any of these, or you're unsure of them, you can maybe leave them off until you've actually done them. Now, everything I'm going to be talking about today is best practice and recommendations. You don't have to do them all. It's recommended you do most of them, especially the first few when we're talking about the data quality and data protection elements of it. But the stuff further down, it might not be relevant for your organization. You might not have e-commerce, you might not have a shop or a ticketing system. So those kind of things you don't need to bother about, but they're all there on there as well. On the second tab is the questions one. So in here, Saeed is going to collate all the questions and stick them in there. So we'll look at this at the end of the session, and then I'll answer anything that you have. Okay, so back to this. So what I'm going to be doing is using examples from an organisation we helped last year. So in North London is an organisation called Arts Depot, and they do varied arts and cultural things. In their performance centre, they've got 2 theatre spaces, drama and dance studios, gallery and cafe. So it's quite a broad range of things that they do there. And when we first got in touch with, they got in touch with us, we were looking at their analytics. Was it set up correctly? So the stuff that we're going to do today is exactly the same things that we did with Arts Depot. So Helen has kindly said that I can show you the different slides, the screenshots from their analytics account. So we're looking at live data that's relevant to the arts and culture sector. So the first question you need to ask is, do you have access to Google Analytics? Now, some organizations don't, and this is the first step. So in the first webinar, we looked at some examples of where you didn't have access, and I sent resources. Part of the resources of that was about how you can claim access to Google Analytics if you don't have access. So Sometimes your agency you're working with or a past member of staff did have access, but you don't anymore. You can reclaim access to your own Google Analytics account. And in that first webinar as well, we were talking about how to find out if you have it installed on your website. So that's using a browser extension. So watch that first webinar if you've not already. The second question is your user the administrator of the account? Now, either your user or a user in your organization, they need to be an administrator of the account. Now, sometimes web agencies that you might be working with say, no, we must have administrator access, you're not allowed access to it. That's not true. You can have access. There's nothing technically stopping them giving you access. So if you log into your analytics account, you go into the admin section, and then if you click the user management options, you'll then see this if you don't have administrator access. So for this example, we've been, as a user, we've been given access to Arts Depot, but we cannot manage any of the users. We can do lots of other things, but we can't manage the users. So we get this message. So we can either request access for those permissions, or we can remove ourselves. In the example that we used for the first webinar, when I created a brand new analytics account, I was the owner, I was the administrator. It's a different page you'll get. In the top right, you'll be able to see, sorry, my throat's gone really dry. In the top right is a big plus where you can add users. So if you see this, then you are an administrator, you do have full access to add users and everything. And when you add people in, you'll then have the option to edit, give them permissions to edit, to collaborate, to read and analyze, and lastly, the one to manage users. So as I was saying, if it's an agency that's saying they can't give you the access, they can. All they have to do is tick a box. Okay, so that's the first one. Secondly, do the account, property, and view names make sense? So we're going to look at those in a sec. So the account, this is best practice recommendations. Your account should be your organization name. The property, you can have multiple properties under an account, should be the website address. So you can have different website or apps if you've got an app. And then underneath properties, you'll have different views. Now, you might have a master view. Usually, if you've only got one view, it's called all website data. But you can add additional ones. It's quite easy to do. And then I'll show you what you should have in an ideal world. So for Arts Depot example, the first element is the account is called Arts Depot. The property is the website name. And then in the views, we've got 3 different views. So we've got one called master. So that's the one that's filtered for analysis. So the stuff we're going to look at today is all about configuring the account from the base data, so it's specific to you as an organization. The other one is a test view for testing. So if you want to play around with it, you can test it in there without affecting your core data. And then the third one we have here is the unfiltered raw data. Do not touch. So I recommend you definitely have that third one, because if you have that just recording away, you've not used any filters, you've not done any configuration, it's best practice to have that set up and just ticking away. You don't have to ever touch it, but it's there to fall back on if you have any questions about your data or anything like that. So in the Arts Depot example, as I said, we have account, Arts Depot, the property is the website address, and then the view. In this case, we've put 01. Now that just helps the ordering. And then we've put the website address again. Now, the reason for that is if you're working with agencies, or say you're working with a digital culture network and you've given us access to your account, it really helps us find your account, because we'll have a massive list of different accounts and properties and views that we have access to. So for us to easily find yours, it's really helpful to have your address in there. And then the 2 other parts of it are the master, so that's the master view, and then the filtered view for analysis. So that's just a really descriptive. So do your account, property, and views make sense? Check yours and have a look. And the next question is, do you have more than one view? So we're just looking at the different ones there, and I've just zoomed in to the examples. So master, a test view, and an unfiltered raw data. Now, You can have more views, you don't have to have just 3, you can have multiple ones. So you might want to filter to a specific area of your site, or for different people in your organization that just want to look at a certain thing. So there's different ways of using views, but as standard, you should probably have these. Now, once you've gone into your view, you need to have a look at, is it actually collecting data? Because without data, Google Analytics is a bit useless, really, isn't it? So if you go into Google Analytics, you click on Audience and then Overview, you should see a timeline such as this. So it's collecting data over a long period of time. And if that's happening, if there's nothing in there, there's an issue. So you'll need to investigate if it's a setup on your site, or if it's a configuration issue within the account itself. So if you are having troubles with that, get in touch with us. We should be able to help you. Another way of checking is to go into admin again, go to property settings, and then you'll see the property hit volume. So that's the data coming at the property level. It should show you how many you've had in the last day, the last 7 days, and the last 30 days. So it's another quick way of checking if data is coming in. And if it's not coming into the view level, but it is coming into the property level, then maybe there's something wrong with the view that needs adjusting there. So next is any personally identifiable information appearing in Google Analytics? So that's PII, you've probably heard of that before. Now, Google Analytics, it should not hold any of that data. No, nothing. So the stuff we're kind of talking about is postcode data or email addresses of any of your users. It shouldn't appear in the reports. So when you're looking through the reports, if anything comes up like that, you flag it, and then there's ways to remove it and stop it coming into the reports on an ongoing basis. The quickest way to check for email addresses is to go to the behavior reports, go into site content, and then all pages, because we're looking at all pages on the website. And they're in the search bar, which is just here, if you can see that. You can put the @ symbol and then do a search. Now, what I was doing is looking for, because all email addresses have an @ symbol in them, it should appear if that data's in there. Now, Arts Depot, brilliantly, nothing. No email addresses, perfect, that's what we want to see. Well done, Helen. Okay, the next one is IP addresses. Now, as a GDPR requirement for us in the UK, IP addresses should not be sent to Google Analytics. Now, you will never be able to see IP addresses from the interface of Google Analytics, so it's not something that you can check for, but it is saved as in Google's data warehouse. So that information is there, but you can't see it, you can't access it. But because you're saving it, you shouldn't be as part of GDPR requirements. Now, you can't see this in the back end, in the administrative section, or within any of the reports, but you might need to get your developer, or what I'll do, I'll send information about this with the resources, because you need to anonymize that IP address. So anybody that comes to your website, so that's a unique identifier for everybody's device. So my computer has an IP address, my phone has an IP address, they're all different. So that can identify me as a user. Now, there's an article on that Google provide about anonymizing it at the script level on Google. When you put Google Analytics, install it on your website. There's a far easier method through Google Tag Manager. So if you're going to join us on the next webinar, I fully recommend you do, because it's going to be excellent. In a month's time, we're going to talk about this kind of stuff and how you can quickly and automatically anonymize all your IP addresses. So that's one of the most complicated areas that it's quite hard to get your head around. But I will send resources, and it's something that organizations in this country should consider. So now we're going to look at some of the reports, and we're going to see before and after about what data was there and what happens once you remove it. And the first one of these, and we see quite regularly, is your website or your shop or your ticketing system, is the URL of that is excluded from your reports. Because if it isn't, and you're passing data between your website and then to your ticketing system and back and forth, what they will do is start coming up as a referral for each other. So it will say, oh, someone's visited the website from this website, and it will put that information in. Now, if it's not excluded, it will start appearing in reports. So for Arts Depot, we were looking at this in September last year. So this is the data prior to that. When we looked at the reports, you can see that Arts Depot appears as the #1 referrer when we're looking at the acquisition channels in analytics. And there's also system.spectrix.com. Now, Spectrix is a ticketing system, and that's what they're using on their website. So it's passing data from the Arts Depot website to Spectrix for ticket sales, and then it was going back from Spectrix to Arts Depot. So what's happening there is that they think they're referring to each other. So that data is being pushed into analytics as a referrer. Now, the issue with this is that you're actually missing out on the true referrer. So somebody might have come to the Arts Depot website from Facebook or from a campaign you were running, or from another website, one of your someone who's linking to you. Now, because it's being overridden by this, you're actually missing the original source. So all that valuable data about your marketing activity is getting stopped because of this. So to exclude your domains from this is within the admin section of the website. So to access the admin section, it's the bottom left of Google Analytics. There's an admin button. You click into that, you'll get into this section. And the referral exclusion list is set at the property level. So you'll see here within tracking info, referral exclusion list. And what we've done is add spectrix.com, and we've added artsdepot.co.uk. And that's all we needed to do for that part of it. And I'll show you in a bit the difference that has made to the reports. The next question is, are any filters set up? Now, the data coming into Google Analytics, or just however you're sending the data in, so usually from script on your website and your ticketing system. So if that information is coming into your website, what filters do, coming into Google Analytics, what filters do is change the data before it gets to the reports. So filters, if they're done badly, can really affect your data. So you have to be very, very careful about using these. Now, Chris Unit from One Further has written a nice article on how to improve data quality. So I'll include that in the resources. And that explains how to set some of these filters up. And I'm just going to show you some of them that we've set up for Arts Depot last year. Now you'll see the top one of this is called IP address internal. Now, the intention there is because you can know what the IP addresses are for your organization, so where you're located in your offices, you can add this in as a filter to exclude all that traffic. Now, the problem is, in this country, if you're going to start to anonymize your IP addresses because of GDPR, this filter won't work anymore. But in other countries, it will work, or if you decide you don't want to anonymize your IP addresses, then it will work. It's obviously not working in this current situation we're in because we're all dispersed. Nobody is actually in their offices at the moment. So excluding internal traffic from your reports is not actually something that's working right now. But the other ones are far more interesting. So the next one we've got here is called grouping Facebook. So, and I'll show you why in a second. And there's another two there called grouping of Instagram and grouping of email. And then the fifth one we have here is called lowercase request URI. Now, depending on your website, now some websites, when you look at URLs, they're all lowercase, so it's perfect. They're all nice and standardized. It's lovely. It's great. Whereas some websites and platforms, you'll have uppercase letters somewhere, lowercase letters elsewhere, and your URLs are like a camel going up and down, all like that. Now, what this filter is doing is standardizing it. So it's saying anything that comes in, I want to standardize it and make it all lowercase. Because what that does is any data that's in analytics, when you're looking at reports for pages, instead of what Google will do, if it sees a lowercase version and say a capitalized version of the same URL, it classes them as two different lines. Now, what this is doing is standardizing them in all lowercase, so then you get one line on your lovely analytics instead of multiple ones. Lovely. And we've also got filters here for a lowercase campaign, source, medium, and name of the campaign. Now, the reason for that, again, is standardizing it. So no matter if you've got uppercase, lowercase, if you've got Facebook beginning with a capital F and then a lowercase f, it's going to standardize it into the same one. And the last one we have on here is on site search. Now, I'll go into that a bit later because it's a unique way that Arts Depot has their site search and it creates the URLs is why we've had to use a filter to actually get that information into analytics. I'll explain that in a bit. So to go into the Facebook one, you'll see in the reports, when I do a search for Facebook as a source, when I'm looking at my referral traffic coming into my acquisition, you'll see I've got four websites for Facebook. I've got m.facebook, I've got facebook.com, I've got l.facebook.com, I've got lm.facebook.com. Now, all of those are facebook.com. That's all we really need to know. If we want to look at people's devices, whether on mobile or desktop, we can do that utilizing other elements of Google Analytics. So it's not actually useful for us to see them split out in this way. So what we can do is create a filter that goes, this is the grouping filter I was looking at a second ago. And we're saying in this, and again, this is explained in Chris Unit's lovely article that he's done for us. Thank you, Chris. It's saying, I want to search and replace. So I'm going to say in the campaign source. So sources are the domains. So I'm going to say the campaign source is, it begins with anything, something, facebook.com. And if it matches that, I want to replace it with just facebook.com. And that's all that filter is doing. So the data is coming into analytics, it's getting filtered through this filter, and then it's coming out the other end in this beautiful way. Oh, look at that. So now we've got one line of analytics, one line in analytics for facebook.com. So we're saying, instead of those split metrics that we're trying to understand and trying to work out, this is far easier for us. Because we can go, oh, the traffic is coming from Facebook, brilliant. And we can see that the amount of users, the time they're spent and the conversion rate is all down to one line instead of multiple lines. So you can do this for different things. It also happens on Instagram, as we said, as we saw before, and different things coming in, such as email. That can get miscategorized quite often, stuff from emails. So when we now look at the data coming in, on the left, we have Arts Depot is our top referrer. We've got m.facebook as our next referrer. And then we've got further down, we've got things like the system.spectrix.com. On the right-hand side, because those things have now been removed, our top referrer is facebook.com. So it's pulling all those things in together. Londonist is the next one down. So we're actually getting the true referrer instead of Arts Depot and Spectrix appearing in here. So that's a combination of you using the URL exclusion and the filters. So it's really tidying up that data within your account. So I recommend having a look through yours to see if anything appears that's out of sorts, that that shouldn't be on there. That's our own website. Now you might get the same with subdomains. So if you had a website, if your website is artsdepot.co.uk, subdomains are when they have information just before that. So it could be tickets.artsdepot.co.uk. So there's different approaches. I recommend for subdomains is to have them all feeding into the same analytics account. And you can do things that pushes the actual full URL into analytics, so if you can see that data. But I can explain that in more detail if you have more questions about that. The next question, hope you're still with me, is, are any URL parameters excluded? Wow, that sounds exciting, doesn't it? I've just shot ahead. So when you go to your behavior reports on your website, on your Google Analytics account, sorry, you go to site content and you click all pages. That'll give you a list of all the pages that are on your website, supposed according to Google Analytics. Now, in the bottom right, it will say 1 to 10 of how many. Now, when we were looking at this, this was looking at from June to August in 2019 for Arts Depot, 12,446 pages. That's a lot of pages, isn't it? So do we really have that many pages on the website is a common question. You probably don't, and there's reasons why this is happening. So what you can do is where it says page views, if you click that, it will reverse it from descending to ascending. So going from one upwards instead. and you'll start to see a big list of pages that have only had one page view. And you'll be like, what is this? So in this example we're looking at, it's got a / and then a question mark, and then a DM_I, and then a unique identifier. It's blah, blah, blah. And on every single one, it's the same one, DM_I, DM_I. What that is .mailer. So if an email is sent out through .mailer and people are clicking through to the website from that, .mailer puts this unique identifier, and these are called URL parameters, on the end of the URL. So what it's doing for every single person is putting this one on. So that's why you're getting one page view for each one. So that's not great for us to do any analysis on, because we've got these multiple rows for the same page. If we were going to look at a specific page on Arts Depot's website, in this example we're looking at, I'll put it in the search here, it's class / Arts Depot created something or other, Creative Explorers. Now the first one is where we want the information to go. So it's just that URL we want to see. So all the stats here. Now we've also got all these other ones. So this next one is where .mailer hasn't put any identifier in, it's put zeros. So we've got 27 page views from that. And then we've got multiple ones. So it's all split out again. So to fix this, I can provide you with this lovely a lot of URL common things to exclude. So within the setting, in the admin section of analytics, go to view settings within a view, and then there's a box called exclude URL query parameters, and I'll give you these ones. So these are the common ones that we've found over the last year. Again, Chris Unit provided quite a few of these, and we've added loads more that we've come across over the last few months. And what this does is, you'll see in here is DMI. So what this does is says to Google Analytics, if any traffic comes through and it's got this in it, just take that out and just remove it. So it excludes it, and that's it, and it cleans up the data. So by putting that in, from that point onwards, when we look at the reports for the web page we're looking at before, anything coming to Arts Depot Creative Explorer, when we're just searching for that, it's all in one line, because we've excluded .mailers, extra parameters. Now Facebook is another culprit for this. So you'll see FBCID, so Facebook Click ID, that'll appear on a lot of your URLs as well. So by excluding the URLs, it allows us to do that. Now, we did it with Arts Depot. So we've gone from 12,000 pages to now just under 5,000. So Helen, I'm going to be in touch with you next week, and we're going to sort out the rest of them, because I've seen there's a few more. So we're going to get these pages down, because no website has got that many pages unless you're a huge website. But in our sector and what we're doing, it's very rare for them to have that many pages. Okay, so that one's really important to clean up the data that you have in there. Another one is bot filtering turned on? So you might see some stuff like this when you're looking through your acquisition reports. You've got a nice referral. Oh, great! A nice chunk of traffic's come in, and it's come from something like this. This one's, and you would never know it was a bot, because it's called website bot traffic.club. Now they do this with the intention that you go, what is that? And then you put that URL into your browser, and then they'll go, would you like more people coming to your website and all this kind of stuff? So either they'll be trying to do some phishing to nick your data, or they'll be trying to sell you some wonderful marketing product or something like that. So ignore them. They usually come in spikes. So that one we were just looking at there, it just popped up out of nowhere. There was 200 apparent users, and then they disappeared again. So it's definitely a bot. Not happy with that. So within Google Analytics, go to the admin section, go to view settings, and then under where we just were for the exclude URL parameters, you can tick a box which says exclude all hits from known bots and spiders. So Google will do its best bet at trying to remove that data from ever entering your account. So this works quite well, but you can also use filters as well to catch anything that Google misses. So some analytics accounts have filters for just keep adding extra filters for more and more web addresses they want to block from other bots and spiders. But if you try this out, tick that, that usually works for a big chunk of it anyway. So the next question is site search turned on? Now, it's quite an easy one to see if it is turned on or not, is by going to your behavior reports, click site search, and then overview. And in the top right, you can change the date range as well to a longer period if your site doesn't get much traffic. And if it's 0, like this one, it means it's not turned on. And you can turn it on by going, sorry, I'm losing my voice, by going into the admin section, go to the view settings, and there's a toggle button for switching site search on or off. Now, if you turn it on, you'll then be asked to add a query parameter. Now, if you don't know what that is, I'll just show you a couple of examples, or just one example actually. So in Bradford Theatre's case, you'll see that the URL goes bradfordtheatres.co.uk/search. Now, what you want to put in as the query parameter is the bit after the question mark. So in this, in most examples that I've seen on most websites, it's usually a Q, just the letter Q, or an S. In Bradford Theatre's example, it's keywords. And then the search term was John Cooper Clarke. So that's what I put in there. So we want keywords. Going into the admin section, in the query parameter section, we put in keywords. So that's it. So from that point onwards, it will start to track when that happens in the URL, and it will push that information into analytics. Now, as I said earlier, Arts Depot have a different way of doing it. So this is based on the system that they're using. Instead of a query parameter, so no question mark, it's actually a subdirectory, the way it filters the data. So it goes search and then /node and then /test. So it's a bit different. And I'll send in the resources how to manage this and how to put this information in as a filter to then push the information into analytics, because it's just slightly different from the method we just looked at. Once that's done, you'll then start to see the searches that people are doing when they're on your website. So when they reach your site, you've got a search bar. When they search on it, what are they searching for? It's really good for us to use this to see if there's any content gaps or a common misspelling. You might have a show on or some art exhibition that you're putting on with an artist with a very strange name that nobody can ever type, and they can't find it on your website and they're typing on here. This will allow you to see if they're misspelling it, and maybe you could have prompts within the search to actually get people to where they need to be. The next slide, sorry, the next question is, are demographic and interest reports enabled on your website? So to switch this on, in your property settings, this is part of Google's advertising features. So there might be a change to your privacy policy and the cookies that you're setting, your notices about that. I'll send some information in the resources. Now, it's a toggle button, so you just toggle that on. And what that does is, when you create a Google account, you put in your you put in your name, obviously, you put in your date of birth, and you put in your gender. So what happens is that Google can use the logged in users that it has. It can start to push that information into analytics, so you get a bit more insight. In this example we're looking at, the big age range that we've got is 25 to 34-year-olds, and predominantly female. You'll see at the top of this part of it, it will tell you how many, what percentage of users are logged in and they have this information about. So in this case, it's 22.5% of the total users. So a quarter of the users nearly, it knows that this information about them. So it gives you an indication of how much of a sample size that is of your audience and who are coming to your website. So there's lots of stuff that you can start to do with demographic details. But the first question is, when you look at this, does it match your core audience? Your understanding of your organization, are they this demographic? And if they're not, it's strange that you're getting that many to your site. You know, there needs to be something amiss, or you know, maybe you don't know everything about who your users are and stuff. But if it matches, then great, you know, that's a good sign. But by keeping track of this kind of stuff, in this case, this organization might want to approach 18 to 24-year-olds, because that's the lowest demographic they've got on here. So they can start to see a change over time. You know, if they're going to put marketing effort into that, they're then going to see this increase. So that's where analytics really helps, and especially when you've set up your goals, which we're going to talk about in a second, and your objectives for your organization. Are things improving over time? And what is the benchmark? Where are we now, and where do we want to be? The next question is, has any event tracking been set up? Now, this isn't like a ticketed event. This is an event is a classification within analytics, and their interactions, there could be interactions on your website. So as standard, Google Analytics, everything that goes into it is all based on page views. Have you looked at a page, and how long were you there? Essentially are the top metrics that you all know. By using events, you can start to push extra information into analytics that's relevant for you as an organization, that might be useful for you as an organization. I'm going to have a look at a couple of those now. So these are things that are not tracked, but you might want to be tracked. Downloading a file, outbound link clicks, so links off your site. Scroll depth, how far down a page are people consuming your content. We were working with an organization called Create London last year, one of the MPOs, and they didn't have any ticketing system, because you know they don't sell any tickets. So they were really interested in, were people reading the articles that they were producing? You know, really interesting articles about the art that they were producing and the artists that they were working with. Were people reading all the way down to the bottom? And by putting something in place with events, they could start to see that information. So one of their objectives and a goal we'll look at in a second is getting down to really far down the page so that someone's consuming all that content. Another one is video plays, so interacting with videos on your website. And others are email clicks, so people getting in contact with you, or telephone clicks as well. So on mobile devices, you can click a telephone number and it will start to call it. You can track those things using analytics and events. So for Arts Depot, we set up 4 different categories, and you'll see those at the bottom of this page here. I'm just going to zoom in. So the 4 we're talking about is outbound link clicks. So as I say, that's not standard in analytics. File downloads, newsletter subscriptions, and then people getting in contact. So we're going to look at the first 2. So outbound link clicks, if you've got this set up, it pushes information of where they're going. So first off, as an event action, it's going to push the domain name that they're going to. So we've got things to Gruffalo Live, we've got things to the stage and Facebook. So if we want to click on Facebook, look at that, it'll start to give us the actual URLs that people clicked. So in this case, we've got people clicking off to the Arts Depot London Facebook page, which is their own one. So, you know, that really shows an intent of someone wanting to follow them as an organization on social channels. And then we've got the other ones there. So Carbon Theatre, so that might be one of the organizations they're working with or linking out to as well. And the other one is file downloads here. So the top one is directions, Arts Depot PDF. So that shows us that that's a real intent to visit. Someone's downloaded the directions to Arts Depot. So we could start to use that and pull that in as a goal if we wanted to. So it's showing intent to visit. And then the other ones we have what are they called? Percentage marks. Percentage 20 is actually a space. So when you upload a file and there's spaces in the file name, it has percentage 20 because it automatically fills that in as a gap. So that's the way URLs are built in that way. You could actually filter it to change it, so it's much more easy to read. But in this example, the second one is the application pack for the digital marketing officer. So, you know, hopefully whoever it was that downloaded it is now in post, and you know, me and I'll be in touch next week, Helen, and maybe we can introduce me and we can have a chat. So they're events. Now, events aren't pushed into data. You can't do that through the admin panel. What you need to do is either some plugins for your website can do stuff like this. For WordPress, there's one called Monster Insights, and you can turn things like this on. So it's just tick boxes. So once you install the plugin, you tick the boxes that you want, and it will do this kind of stuff for you. Another way is to work with the developer to put it on the pages that are relevant for you and of interest to you. Or thirdly, you could use Google Tag Manager. So again, join us in the next webinar, because we're going to be talking about that. So that's in a month's time, about how to use Google Tag Manager to put this stuff in place. So stuff that's relevant for you as an organization to track. So from events, we're going to move on to goals, because usually they're interlinked. So you'll have multiple events that you want to track of interest, but then you'll have some objectives that you want people to achieve, like top objectives that are set as goals in your organization. So have any goals been set up? So common ones that we've seen over the last year are things like buying a ticket. That's an objective of a website, isn't it? View a visitors page showing intent to visit. Obviously, when we're out of this situation, making a donation, subscribing to a newsletter, watching a video. So there's some of the objectives that you might want as your organization. Now, they change depending on your art form or the type of organization you are. So get in touch if you want us to give you some more examples of what they could be for you, because it's aligned to your digital strategy, essentially. For Arts Depot, we set up these ones. So hire us landing page, so people visiting the hire us page. So that's showing intent to hire us. There's a newsletter sign up one, and there's a purchase one. So the purchase, we'll go on to e-commerce in a second. That is tracked as a separate area of analytics, but you can also set it as a goal as well. So they are part and parcel of the same. By tracking it in the e-commerce section, you're actually getting all the transactional value, which is far more interesting. But we've added it here as well as a goal, just to make it easier for us to navigate and track. You can toggle them on and off as well. So you might want to track them for a certain amount of time and then switch them off. Don't go crazy with these. You can only have 20. And make sure that they're more overarching goals that you want for your website. So don't go down specifically to tickets for a specific show as a goal. You just want tickets, because you can start to break down that granular detail further in other reports. There's no point doing it within a goal setting. So what happens is when you set up goals, and that is done through the admin section of analytics, and we're going to cover that, setting them up, in the next webinar. Okay, so we're not going to go into it too much here, but once they are set up, you'll on the last set of rows, columns within the analytics on like the behavior reports, you'll see a conversion section, and then you can choose the different goals that you have. So in this example, we're clicking goal 1, which is the hirers landing page, and then it will allow you to start to break down the different information about that. So in this example, you can start to see the different conversion rate of people entering the website and then going to do this thing, which is visit this specific page. People coming from Google on a Google search, 1.89% conversion rate, because people that are coming to the website through Google search have got multiple needs. So you don't know what they are coming to the website for. There's multiple reasons that they might be booked to buy a ticket, but these might be one of the things they want to do. Now, it was relevant for 1.89% of those people. Now, at the bottom, we can see that northlondonmums.com is actually referred traffic, and their conversion rate is 45.65%, so a much higher percentage rate. Now, I've not been on this website, but I imagine this website are looking for kids' parties and venues specifically for that, maybe. So someone has posted on maybe their forum and stuff like that, linking through to the website. So it's showing a real high percentage of people that are really interested in booking a room or some space within Arts Depot. So you can see that how by defining the conversion and the goal that you want people to achieve, you can start to break down the sources that are driving that, and maybe look at where there's opportunity to add extra places. So can you approach other websites to link to you for specific goals that you want to achieve? Next is, has e-commerce tracking been set up? Now, as I was saying earlier, not all of you will have ticketing systems or shops. you might not be generating revenue in that way, or that's not part of your business model. For those that do, it's really recommended that you switch on e-commerce tracking, because it gives you so much more insight, and I'll show you an example of how powerful it can be in a second. So within analytics, you go to the view in the admin section, you click on e-commerce settings, and you toggle the on switch, and that's all you have to do from the analytics side. Now the hard bit is the other side of stuff. So on whatever ticketing system you have, or whatever shop platform, you need to put the right analytics code on there. Now, I'm not going to show you examples of that because it can be very complicated, or it can be very easy. So there's different methods of doing it, and depending on the platform. But depending on what you're using, there's different ways of doing it. But if you need help with any of that, get in touch, and I'll probably point you in the right direction. Once it is set up and information is coming from the ticketing system or the shop, and it's being pushed into analytics, it means that you can get data such as this. You can start to see the conversion rate, so the amount of people coming to your website and then buying something. You can see how many transactions that you've achieved in a certain date range, how much revenue you've generated, the average order value, and then how many unique purchases, and then the quantity of stuff that you've sold. So you can start to build up a benchmark of people coming to your website, and then start to see what you can do marketing wise, or changing navigation, things like that, to make things easier for people. When we look in reports, in this example, just by the way, these e-commerce figures are not from Arts Depot. They're from an unknown organization. You'll never guess who it is. It's definitely, well, it's not Arts Depot, but it's somebody else. It's somebody else we work with. So you'll see that the top, the biggest amount of revenue that's coming in is from organic search. We find that quite often is that the user journeys that people go on, they'll come to your website, and they'll find out about you as an organization. They'll come to your website, they'll go away, they might sign up to your newsletter, find out a bit more information about you, they'll think about you, and they'll come back many moons later and then buy a ticket. So they don't usually do it in the same session. So that's why Google and organic is usually the highest when it comes to revenue, because of the user journey that someone's gone on. So by turning on e-commerce, you can start to see that different stuff that you're doing. So Facebook is generating £1,000 revenue for this organization. The email campaigns that are being sent out by this organization have generated £16,000 worth of revenue. So you can start to see the return on investment of the stuff that you're doing. And that once that information is coming into analytics, you can start to access it from all the different reports as well. Now, we talked about demographics earlier on. Now, if they're turned on and your e-commerce is turned on, you can start to bring those data sets together. So that's when Google Analytics becomes really powerful. In this example, what we're doing, we're saying, I want to split out male and female demographic, and I want to split out the age range of 25 to 34-year-olds, and then 35 to 40 or 4-year-olds. And I'm going to compare them and see how much revenue they're generating and if there's any difference. And you'll see here the top one, this is females, 35 to 44-year-old. They convert, when they're on the website, they convert to buy a ticket much higher than the other ones in the list. So they convert nearly a whole percentage higher than the other ones, the other demographics we're looking at there. So 4.95% of that age range, that gender, come to the website and buy those amount of tickets. So they are spending a lot of money. Whereas males, so the bottom one we're looking at here, of the 25 to 34-year-olds, have actually spent more money. So they are more valuable because they've bought more tickets in volume. So it allows you to start to see where the opportunities are. Who should we be targeting marketing-wise if we want to generate more revenue, or is there opportunity? When I look at this example, the third one down is males 35 to 44-year-olds. Now they have only, there's only been 104 transactions from them and very minimal revenue. But the conversion rate is quite similar to the other three there. Sorry, the other two above and below. So should we spend should we have marketing spend specifically targeting that age range, that gender, And if we do, we might see an uptick of an audience that we've not reached really before. So that's where analytics can be really powerful, of using your data to inform the marketing that you're doing. Now, you may have seen when we toggled the e-commerce setup on, an option for enhanced e-commerce. Now, depending on the system you're using for ticketing or system you're using for shops, it might not have the ability to turn enhanced e-commerce on. So what that does is push a lot more interesting information into analytics. So normal e-commerce will give you, the products that were sold, and then the value and the quantity and things like that. Whereas enhanced e-commerce, when you turn that on, you can start to break down the different steps that they will take through the journey of your website or the actual checkout process. So again, it's a toggle, but you'll need to check with your system provider whether they have enhanced e-commerce or just e-commerce information. So that's information that sits in the background of the website and gets pushed into analytics. What you can do, as I said, is set out step by step your checkout. This example is from TicketSolve, so one of TicketSolve's clients. So they have enhanced e-commerce on a standard with their platform, and you can start to see the drop-off through the process, through the checkout process. And their drop-off is actually quite low. Looking at this, it's really good. So from getting from the event page through to the checkout form, there's a drop-off of 3%. And then from the checkout form to when they hit the payment page, is 8.29%. So looking at that percentage of people going through, you're still getting 90% of people who are actually buying the ticket. Whereas there might be ways that you can improve the messaging or the design or the checkout process to actually improve that. So if you can start improving the dropout, so it's less, then you'll get more sales. So again, it's giving you extra insight by turning these things on. Next is within the configuration is Google Ads linked. So you may be using Google Ads as part of your marketing activity. Now, if you are a non-profit organization, you can get $10,000 a month of free ad grant from Google. So if you want to find out more about that, I'll add it in the resources, but you might want to speak to Saeed, who's our search engine optimization and pay-per-click advertising tech champion, and he can advise you about all the wonderful things that you can do with $10,000 a month. If you don't, it's still useful to use Google Ads, and he will explain that as well, so you can have a chat with him. So when you go to acquisition in analytics, you go to Google Ads and go to campaigns, it will tell you whether it's linked or not. And this is the page you'll get if it's not. If it is, you'll start to see information such as this. So this is an organization, an arts and culture organization we've been working with, and they have linked up their account. And you can start to see the revenue on the right that's generated based on the campaigns that they're running through analytics. So sorry, through Google Ads. And if you watched our first webinar, we talked about UTM parameters. Now, if you use UTM parameters properly and you track you add them to the email stuff you're sending out and the social media stuff that you're doing, you can start to see that as a campaign as well within the acquisition channels, and you can get the same detail as this. So you can start to see the revenue that's generated based on the campaigns that you're running. But this is great to see because you're getting the actual cost of the adverts and the return on investment against the revenue that you're making. So it's brilliant to see that within analytics as well. The top one, and I'm sure Saeed can explain this far better than me, but because the top one is the example is a brand name, so it's the arts organization's name that they're using AdWords for. That will mean that they sit at the top of the Google listing. So when someone searches for that organization, that appears at the top. So we're seeing loads of traffic through from that, because instead of clicking the next one down, which would probably be the organic listing, so the non-paid version of it, we're actually clicking the top one. But it gives you far more control about the information you display there. So it's really still useful to do. Next is Google Search Console linked? Now, again, go to Analytics, go to Acquisition, go to Search Console, and then Landing Pages. And then if it's not, you'll get this page. if it is linked, you'll get information about where people are coming from when they search for you on Google. So when you're on google.com or .co.uk, when they search there and then come through to your website, that information gets pushed in here. So it will show you how many times you've appeared for a certain search term. So how many impressions you've had. And then you'll start to see how many clicks you've had through to your website as well. So that's really good to understand the search engine optimization that you have and your organic listings. I'm just going to quickly show you some examples of how to identify bad data. So we've looked at probably over 100 analytics accounts, arts and cultural analytics account over the last year. And there's various things that we come across, and hence a lot of the content that we've covered in this already. But I just wanted to show you a couple of examples of what to look out for. And it might just be like, that doesn't seem right. So in this example, it's an organization that had e-commerce set up. So they're using a ticketing system. It's linking through the data, all the information's there. But when we look at the revenue that's generated and then the conversion rate, most of the different channels are about 1–2%, but then one of them is 10%. So it's a massive jump. So if there's anything that you see in your analytics where there is a very much higher value than all the others, make sure you ask why, and make sure it's actually correct. Because in this case, 10% conversion rate and 70% of revenue was being attributed to direct. Now, direct as a channel with Google Analytics is when Google Analytics doesn't know. So it can't work it out. So it will say that person has either put the URL in the address bar straight in, or someone shared it with someone on WhatsApp and they've clicked that link, so dark social. But those are only two of the ways, and the other is that Google just doesn't know. Now, for that to be representing 70% of the revenue that's being generated is it's not right from what I've seen and across all organizations. So we had a look at that, fixed it. It was just part of the way it was configured, and now it's all singing and dancing. All the information is being attributed to the right channels and it's all working correctly. But it's things like that you need to be aware of. Another example is that when you go to your behavior reports, you look at your all pages. Now, earlier we were talking about the volume of pages, like thousands of pages. Now in this one, we're seeing the top result was generating over, in this time date range that we're looking at here, over 200,000 page views. So that's above the home page. So we've got a page that's above the home page, and it was /widget blah 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 and a random number. And we've changed these so you can't find out who this organization is. And that's very suspicious. Your homepage is usually the top one, unless you've got some great content. So widget it's very strange. So what we had to look at was, where's this coming from? What is it? And we started to use segments to exclude it and just see if there's any difference. What it turned out to be is that it was an Instagram widget embedded in a website, into the website, on every single page of the website, but within it was the same analytics code as the account, as the website. So what it was doing was duplicating page views and users throughout a whole period. So when we looked at the reports between September and September, so a whole year, the numbers that were being recorded in analytics were being inflated by nearly 1 million page views. Now, when you're reporting and trying to make marketing decisions on these kind of things, you need to have confidence in the data. And by this, you might have been like, oh, we're having a great month, we've got loads more visitors to the site. Well, actually, they weren't. It was actually a misconfiguration. So, this over that year, they had 250,000 extra users that were added to the analytics reports when they shouldn't have been. Just going to speed up quickly and go through these last few bits. Annotations. So you may be going, how does James know that he works on Arts Depot's website on the 18th of September 2019? It's because I used annotations. So at the bottom of any reports that you see, there's these little speech bubbles, really tiny ones. If you click them, it should drop down and it'll give you more information about what is in there. So I've got different lines. In September last year, 18th and 19th, I documented all the changes I made to the account. So in this case, the actual stats we're looking at and why it drops off on the 19th is because that was looking at the m.facebook as a source. And because we had excluded it using the filter, from that point onwards, that data wasn't going in. So it's really good to use annotations, and you do that by, on the right-hand side, there's a little plus button that says create a new annotation. And I really recommend you do this. And it could be for changes you're making as part of this, or it could be changes that you want to implement. Sorry, it could be things that have happened globally, or when. So, for example, you might want to put when your venue closed because of COVID, or you might want to add in when you reopened, or when your big on sale happened. So it allows you to understand why what the spikes and troughs are when it comes to your analytics. And within the view section of the admin section, there is the option to click into annotations, and you can see the full list across all the accounts as well. So you can see this historical timeline of annotations. Next is, do you have a custom alert set up? So this is a recommended thing you do. And again, Chris Unit created a nice article on this one, so we'll link to that one. But essentially what you can do is set certain parameters, so it will look out for things that are happening. In this example, I'm just playing around with it earlier on, but so it's within the admin section again, set at view level. You click custom alerts. And what you can say in this one, I want to say every day, I want you to look at, I'm telling Google Analytics this, I want you to look at if my sessions decrease more than 50% against the same day last week, then send me an alert, send me an email about it, because I want to know. And there's lots of different ways, things that you could use this for. So it's really good to put this in place, because it allows you to see, if if your website went down, or there was a drop off in sales, or something happened, or something like that, or there was a big spike in people hitting your 404 page. By using alerts, you can be told about it really soon, and then you can get in touch with your developer, or you can investigate the problem yourself. Lastly, is Google Tag Manager installed? Now, you might have analytics on your website. Now, in the first webinar, we used the tag assistant plugin for analytics. If you use that on your website, it will tell you. It will say Google Analytics is on, and then in Arts Depot's example, it will say Google Tag Manager is installed as well. Fantastic. So check that with yours. So if you have Google Tag Manager installed, brilliant. And if you don't, because when I did, most organizations, arts and cultural organizations, don't have Google Tag Manager. I did a review of northwest of England national portfolio organizations, and only about a third of them had Google Tag Manager installed. So there's a massive opportunity to use it. Now, the stuff we were talking about earlier when it came to events and goals, Google Tag Manager will absolutely help with all those things. So the next webinar in a month's time, please sign up for that, and we'll see you there for that. But that's the end of me waffling on through this. And now we're going to go to your questions. So let's have a look at what you've said. Anything of interest? Okay. So what happens if you do not have a search bar on your website? If you don't have a search bar on your website, then there's no point turning on site search. You might want to add a search facility on your website, but in analytics, just leave it off, and it's not going to do any harm. Secondly, do goals and events need to be set up with Google Tag Manager? For events, it's recommended you use it. There are other ways of going about it, as I said earlier on, but the goals are configured in analytics. Now, the information you push to achieve them is using Google Tag Manager. So the next webinar will cover that, and we'll go through all the different points. So next one is, can I combine more than one site into one set of analytics? So your Shopify, your shop platform, LinkedIn from a website. Yes, absolutely. And as we said before, when I was talking about the ticketing systems, it's recommended you do that as well, and subdomains. So by doing that, when and if you use the exclude URL parameters if you need to, and cross-domain tracking, that's another thing that I can explain in more detail if you want to get in touch, and we'll go through that. But yes, use the same analytics code on all the different ones that you're using. And what that does is allow you to see the customer journey go from your site through to Shopify and back again. So without using the same analytics code, they're going to be spit out metrics. So try to bring those things together if you can. Next ones. Do you have any tips for someone whose website contains the majority of their content on the homepage using a scrolling format? Oh, that's an interesting one. Oh, I've not seen that one before. Okay, so any tips? I mean, yeah, I mean, you could use scroll depth, but I suppose it all depends on what kind of content that you have on there. So is it that it automatically scrolls? So then it will probably hit 100%. Oh, it's an interesting one. I think you have to get in touch with me and then we can have a look at this together. I'm quite excited. But you'd want to see more time on site, I suppose, because they're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. But you could use Google Tag Manager or some other way of putting the script in for it to load. It will tell you how deep they're going, not just scroll depth, but actually, going through your content. You could get it to fire information through. So that's quite a unique one, and we're definitely happy to look at that with you. Next is, how do you know when someone's clicking on a particular section as opposed to scrolling past it on the way to another section? Is there a way you need to use Google Tag Manager to measure scrolling? Oh, so is that linked to the same one? Sorry, yes. Yeah, what you could do, you could get it to fire after it hits a certain point. So Google Tag Manager, it could keep an eye, because that's what it does. It keeps an eye on what's happening on the website. So it could say, if this certain element appears in the script, then fire an event into analytics. So if this happens, then do this. But this might be quite an interesting example that we might use for the next webinar, actually. So yeah, please get in touch. We'll talk about that one. Next one is, when I look at my search terms, I have mostly things like, wow, that's interesting, isn't it? So I'll be interested to see what your website is and how what is happening there, because it looks like something's getting pushed in from somewhere else. When it comes to cache, things like that, that looks like it might be actually from Google's cache being pushed through, or could be accelerated mobile pages, but we'll have to investigate that one. It's a bit strange that that's within a search term. Next one. We're a video production company. How do I set an average client spend in e-commerce to indicate a lead from a customer? Successful consultation, but indicate successful channels. So what you can do when you set up your goals, if it's not an e-commerce to indicate, yeah. So if it's a lead, with the goals, when you're configuring a goal, you can set up an expected value, so you can put a value against that. So if you know that if somebody gets in touch with you as a lead, and then 10 out of those people actually go on to sign up or something like that. So we know that 10 people and 1 out of 10 people sign up if they do the thing you're looking at. We could say that whatever value that is for your organization, so £100, I'm making it really simple for myself here. If it's £100, I'm going to attribute £10 to every single one of those, because it's split between 10. So what we can set on the goal level is that every time someone clicks that button to get in touch with you, the goal is fired into analytics, and we're setting a £10 value against that, because we know that we need 10 of them in the funnel to then achieve £100 of one person signing up to you. Hope that makes sense. So how is the revenue measured? So purely check out box office sales. So yes, so the revenue is measured for online sales. Now, there are ways that you can push information into analytics, and you might want to look at another platform called Google Tag Manager if you want to things like bring in box office sales or face-to-face sales as well from a ticketing system into the same data pool. So as standard, when you set up this for online sales, it's going through the checkout process, and that confirmation page that someone reaches, there's information, it's called the data layer of the website. It gets pushed into analytics, and it gives them the amount spent, the amount of tickets, and the product names as well. So things like that gets pushed into analytics from that point. But yeah, as you say, box office sales, ones that are face-to-face or over the phone, are not going to come into analytics. You'll need to work on a different way, and there are methods to do it to push that information in. So where do you add annotations? So I can quickly show you if it wasn't covered on that first bit. Let's go to my... This is the one we set up for the first webinar. So we go to the admin section, bottom left. And then within a view, you've got annotations here. So you can add annotations for specific dates. So a date, blah, 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 blah. You can actually make them private to your account if you wish to as well. So you can put in whatever text you want there. And then that'll appear in all the reports. If you want to add it from a report section, I'll just click the wrong one there. Not that one. Go over here. Oh, we did that there. Sorry. Yeah, underneath the reports, in the center, there's this tiny, it's really small. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little downward arrow. If you click that, and it was on the audience report, I just completely missed it. If you click that, it'll open this bit up and this bar, and then over to the right, it says create new annotation. Click that, and then again, you can set a certain date, and then usually it sets it for the day that you're doing it, but you can change that. And then you can type in your annotation there, and then save it, and then that'll appear as a tiny little speech bubble forevermore. And you know, for your successors to you in your role, they will thank you gladly for doing this as much as you can now. And your future self as well will go, oh, I'm so glad you did that. Thank you so much for telling me why these things happened, because you will forget. I do all the time. Okay, and then can you suggest a WordPress plugin to install Tag Manager? Yes, use Google Site Kit. Now, people keep thinking I say side kit, kid. I say Site Kit. Now, you can use this one or use something like Monster Insights. Now, Monster Insights is a bigger, bulkier thing. This is a lot cleaner, and it's by Google for Google, so it's much better. So SiteKit, that's how you say it. It's Google's official WordPress plugin, and what you can do within it is within the settings. You once you've installed this, you log into your different accounts. So you log into Analytics, you log into the page speed insights, so that gives you stuff about how your pages perform as well, speed-wise. And then you can log into Search Console. So if you don't have Search Console or not linked it, it'll do that part for you as well, which is really good. And then you can link in Google Tag Manager as well. So all those four things are all managed within the plugin, and it presents it in a really nice way. So I recommend you use that one. Okay, and then last question. We have two different analytics account names, one for the website and one for the shop. Can we see the full customer journeys from this, or do we need to link them differently? Ideally, you bring them all under one, but there are ways that you can actually do it to track. Essentially, you're looking for the referral between those two different websites that you have. So yeah, it's a bit harder because you're then moving from one account into the other account, and you're trying to match up different date ranges and stuff like that. Now, with Google Tag Manager, you are able to do cross-domain tracking to push information through to set a user, but again, that's it's down to the same analytics account, because when it comes to privacy and things like that, it doesn't want to, the browsers and Google Analytics, they don't want to be pushing this information out to third parties. They want to keep it within the same thing and the same accounts as well. So there are ways to do it, but I do recommend bringing it into one. But do get in touch, and I can talk you through that, and we can look at the different options for you if you want. So that's the end of the questions. I'm just going to switch back to my slides. And just to go through the two main things that you're going to get. So this checklist is going to cover everything that we've talked through. So it's going to say what you should be doing, or what's the recommended best practice, and you can tick against those. And then I've explained why I can't even speak anymore. Why is it important? So why am I telling you to do these things? So there's a line there as well. So if you need to go and speak to somebody else about it, this tells you why. So why is this important for you to go away and do? And then you can prioritize these as you wish. Secondly, in the resource, I'm going to send you a link to this. Now, what this is an audit dashboard. And what it is, you click the URL and then it will give you the option to add it to your account, and then it will load this as a dashboard within your analytics account. And it covers some of the questions that we've covered that are in the document, the document we're just looking at. So, for example, are any goals set up? This will tell you if any are or not. Is e-commerce tracking in place? It will tell you in one. I think we've got about 15 different of the questions in this report. So it's a quick way, instead of you going through what I've just done, I've gone through every single section. This will give you a quick overview of some of those parts of it, so you can actually see where you should put some effort in. So next Thursday, so same time, 2 o'clock next Thursday, Syed and I, what we're going to do is we're going to do a Zoom meeting. So you'll see me and Syed's face, and we're just going to sit there on YouTube, and you can ask any questions. So if you want to go into the stuff that we've talked about today, you can ask more questions through the chat or get in touch in advance and then ask us. So we're going to be here answering questions for as long as you need us, for an hour, I think. So that's next Tuesday. And then after that, as I said, in a month's time, on the 18th of June, we're going to go into Google Tag Manager for absolute beginners. And this is where it starts to get really interesting. So the first webinar was around getting it on your website and installed. This one was making sure the data quality is where it should be. And then this third one is about configuring events and extra tracking that really make it easier to understand how your users are interacting with your organization, and what's useful for you to find out. And it starts to, this is when you get past this stage, it starts to get really interesting, because you can start to inform the marketing you're doing, and really focusing the spend you're doing, and finding loads more insights about your audiences. So that's why I've structured these first 3 webinars in this way, is that do these first 3, get through that. It's the hard work. Get it all done, and then when you pass that, it's all the fun stuff. It's the insights and the exciting bits. So yes, come to that one as well. And last slide is our lovely faces of our tech champions. So what we're doing at the moment is we're working on what other webinars will be coming up across our specialisms. So you'll see here we've got the different specialists we have. There's digital marketing, search engine optimization, website design, digital content, e-commerce, social media. Our brand new tech champion, Peggy. So she's joined us in Bristol office, and she's brilliant at email marketing. So if you want help around that, she's the one for you. And then we've got box office and CRM, and then myself, which is the data analytics and insight tech champion. So we are spread across England. We work as a national team and expect much more from us over the next weeks and months. And yeah, if you need help, if you are eligible for Arts Council funding, then please get in touch, because we can actually offer you free one-to-one support. Okay, that's me done. Thank you so much.